Wow. Wow, Reverend Brown, it's great to be in your church. Christians and Jews together, Jews of all colors. Because we're not one color, we're a multi-ethnic community. We are honored to be here in this place, the spirit and the wonder and the blessing. I am moved. I am moved. Now I know that the number 30 is supposed to be in my head right now. After all, we are celebrating 30 years of this relationship, this essential coalition, this pulpit exchange, this work and effort of holiness to be back on track. It's a day that honors the memory of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the profound and majestic ideals that he professed. 30 years ago, our two congregations came together, well, to commit to living by those ideals, that in our diversity there is beauty, in our cooperation there is strength, in our commitment to faith and justice there is power to repair and heal a broken world. We at Congregation Emanu-El, we are proud and grateful to you for this relationship and to working with the beautiful people of this historic church. But I do have to confess that the number 40 is also on my mind. 30 is an important anniversary. But we Jews, we practice this numbers interpretive game called gematria. It's an attempt to discern deeper meaning of God's word through a biblical Hebrew-based numerology. Maybe it's a kind of coding, I don't know. 36, well, what does that represent, folks, here? Double high life in our community. And the number 40, well, 40 is an essential biblical number. How many days did Noah spend in the ark? 40 days and 40 nights cast about on an ark with only the Spirit of God to guide him as he and his cargo of biodiversity floated about on a sea-swept world. He was a lonely man of faith, hoping for God's essential rachamim, God's mercy, to allow that world to be renewed while praying like we did in Seattle for the rain to stop. That number 40, Moses, our greatest rabbi, how many days and nights did he spend on Mount Sinai? 40 days and 40 nights encountering God's presence while receiving the foundation of our mutual value system, the 10 Commandments, and that which we call Torah, our deepest teachings. Yes. And then our ancestors, the Israelites, you know, how many years did they spend wandering Bamidbar in the wilderness, everybody? 40 years transforming from a people controlled by their slave mentality, having been ruthlessly oppressed for 10 times 40 for 400 years in Egypt. And it was during those 40 years in the wilderness that they were molded into a holy congregation that could bring hope and change to the world as they marched their way towards the promised land. It took them 40 years to find direction. Well, the number 40 is on my mind, of course, because this holy congregation, this treasure of San Francisco, Third Baptist, is celebrating 40 years. 40 years led by your Moses, this marvelous pastor, Amos Brown. For 40 tireless years. I don't know where he gets that energy and that voice from. He has led with his professionalism, his dedication, his great intellect, and his courage. And he hasn't just led this flock, he has led the people of San Francisco. Reverend Brown has helped to move us forward, help us to see that we should be building a city that casts a light of hope on a hill. A vision into the world that needs to see God's potential in every single human being, so that we together can push back the darkness of hate and fear, and I must tell you, moral emptiness that envelops our culture today. My colleague and I my boss, Rabbi Beth Singer. Well, we're following in the footsteps of the immensely gifted Rabbi Stephen Pierce. We are profoundly grateful to your pastor, who has so generously invited us in to participate in this holy task. And we are grateful to his secret weapon, to Mrs. Brown's back there. You both inspire us the way you work together, the way you support spirituality and justice in this community, just as you've inspired so many to see the limited people that we might be, that we can be God's partners and change this world.
That's right.
Well, I want to go back to that number 40. I think it can teach us a lesson for now and for the future as we prepare for what could be more challenging times for this country that we love. In the Bible, we are told the children of Israel came to the mountain of God, to Mount Sinai, to receive the commandments, a gift of structure and hope and value that could transform our relationship as people to each other, to this earth, to God. What Moses do? He trudged up that mountain. He told his nervous flock who looked to him for guidance and leadership that he'd be back in 40 days. But while he was up on that mountain, witnessing God form and give these transformative teachings, what Moses do? He delayed. I would delay too. He was dwelling, after all, in the presence of profound, indescribable wonder. Now we know a pastor can be off doing good things, and the flock can get nervous. The tradition tells us that this is what happened. Moses was gone a little bit longer beyond 40. He delayed on that mountaintop, and down below, newly freed from Egypt, the people did not yet understand the significance of the wonder and the glory that they were honored to be a part of. Though they had witnessed the transformation, the salvation of the outstretched arm of God, who brought them to freedom, who split the sea, who fed them manna in the wilderness. Friday night I told people the manna was a tortilla because we gave you tacos there. And then brought them to the mountain of hope. Despite all that, they still did not completely understand how their world had moved forward. Instead of focusing on being amazed, they became temporarily lonely and afraid. And we all know, fear is one of the worst and most powerful forces in life. Fear can cause good people to take wrong steps. Even as you're making your way forward to your promised land, a woman or man in fear, worried about the future, about jobs, about displacement, uncomfortable with the rate of change, worried about being left behind. Even as they're experiencing the miraculous, freedom and wonder, and living as Americans at a level that no other people in history has ever lived at. Fear can make them step backwards and fall easily into the idolatry of seeking seductively simple answers to life's problems. What's the Bible say? When the people saw Moses was so long in coming down the mountain, they demanded of Aaron, build us a golden calf. Make us an idol. For that Moses, we know what has happened to him, and we need a God to go in front of us. I am ashamed of that passage of the Torah. It's one of our lowest points in Jewish history. They asked for an idol in the presence of the miraculous. They started worshiping a false god. Don't you worry that we're in such a time today? When just as we thought that we were in a new place, That we left that kind of intolerance of Egypt behind, where hate speech would not be acceptable, where diversity would be celebrated, where a woman's right to control her body would be unquestioned, where LGBT citizens would be truly treated with dignity, knowing full well we had not yet reached the promised land, because there's remaining endemic racism, unconscious privilege, police brutality. We know that. But we know we were also going forward. We were on the path of becoming the society we dreamed to be, only to now cast yet again out of the furnace of fear a golden calf of intolerance. But I'll tell you, we never thought we'd see this today, where the spewers of hate feel liberated as they dance on the internet in front of the calf, hoping to guide us back towards Egypt of the past, instead of towards the promised land of the future. Now, why did this happen? Maybe because we, as religious and socially justice-focused leadership, maybe we were overwhelmed with a sense of wonder at the heights of hope we'd achieved as we came to this moment. We could look into the ranks of political, social, and business leadership and see a talented, beautiful diversity forming. We could see progress in technology. We could see the dynamism of this city and believe that with knowledge and development, we would keep pushing back the small-mindedness of hatred. Well, it's at this moment in the Bible that Moses is alerted by Adonai, by God, who proclaims, Moses, you've tarried too long at this mountain. Jews and Christians and Muslims, we learn from these words that religion must not be about dwelling in that personal spiritual place, enthralled by God's presence. No, we go to those heights to be inspired. But then we must go back down again, as Moses and Martin did, God bless him, and go back into the world and face what is wrong and return us to the path of hope. Moses came down and shattered the tablets made by holiness. He acted loud and clear that such idolatry was not the way forward. With all his energy and might, he put the Israelites back on track. He reconnected them to their sense of holiness, their higher purpose, to the wonder and vision that they held dear. This is what Martin Luther King did for this country. We need that kind of religious voice again. And because of that voice of clarity, which was not popular at first, that's right, they began to turn, to do what we Jews call tshuva, back to the path towards their promise. That must be our mutual task today. To not lose hope at this time, to not give up in exasperation, to not build walls of rejection of our neighbors who we know have stumbled in front of that idol, but to understand that now begins our moment to shatter those idols and then get back to the work as good people united in blessing, making our way forward towards hope. Let us together shatter the golden calf of hate that thinks it's okay to limit black voting in this country, that thinks it's okay to oppress Hispanic and black neighborhoods. Instead, let us turn towards a future where black lives matter and are precious to us because they're holy. Let us shatter the idol of easy racism that keeps our police from protecting neighborhoods of color. A racism that forces children of color in cities like Chicago to cower at home, afraid both of criminals and the police. In my neighborhood, the National Guard would have been called out by now. But instead, people fumble.
Speak the truth.
We have to work to ensure that our society in San Francisco protects the innocent and invest in all of its citizens. They are all our precious resource. And we Jews, we have our concerns. I need to tell you, we need your help in shattering the idol of a new anti-Semitism. You know it's there. You know it's there. You hear it. This election brought it out again for us too. There was a swastika painted on the sign of Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, Ohio, the oldest rabbinical school in the U.S., just last week, because people feel like it's okay now. There are children in their locker rooms here in the Bay Area telling Jewish kids to go back where they came from. They said, go back to New York. We know the extreme exists on the left and the right. And we have to push it back. That hatred of stereotyping and scapegoating. Even making Israel the center of all the world's problems. Yes, they have to work towards peace. But next door, hundreds of thousands of Syrians and Iraqis and Kurds are being murdered, made homeless, and unwelcome throughout the world.
That's right.
We have to shatter those idols, because in a time of fear, people build idols. But you know, Moses, he came down and he understood that this was a temporary setback, that leadership can shatter them. He found his voice. We have to find our voice. I am grateful to the NAACP for protesting the possibility of a racist attorney general representing all of us in the hallways of power. I am grateful to brave women and men who are going to march to protect the rights of wisdom women in cities all over this country. And remind people that a woman got the popular vote. Don't think you have a mandate. Let's shatter that idol. As the Israelites did, we will make our way forward back on the road towards the promised land. We have made much progress, like having a viable woman candidate for president. I was amazed, a viable Jewish candidate for president. A 70-year-old Jewish guy was running seriously. It was amazing for our people. But let's not forget, we had a two-term African-American president who made us proud. Made us proud. Gracious and dignified, standing up for all of us. God bless him. So let us not lose hope. Moses re-engages, and it's our time to do the same. And the calf is destroyed, but the covenant of goodness is renewed. This is a temporary moment if we rededicate ourselves to speaking out, to marching, to standing up, to teaching, to pushing back the hate and the fear. We will then start yet again to fulfill that dream of Martin and Moses. That the world can be different, that this country must be a light to the nations and help the world see that God's light shines from every human being. Black, yellow, brown, white, lesbian, gay, transgender, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, secular, but soon to join one of our places of worship. A light that, in the words of the prophet Zechariah, when we push back the darkness and look at that light, we will only be able to say these words: beautiful, beautiful. Amen.